Hello, LinkedIn, and welcome back. And to all our podcast listeners that are catching up on this episode later, my name's Sarah Goodall. I'm the CEO of Tribal Impact, and we today are talking about social media and sales. And I am so happy we finally got Paul Lewis to join us from Pitney Bowes. So, Paul, we've known each other for quite a long time, haven't we? And then recently met each other at LinkedIn. So, yeah, do you want to give us just as a bit of an introduction, because we're going to be talking about social media and sales. We're going to dive straight in. But do you want to just give us an introduction to you and your role? Because you head up digital, social media, marketing and sales enablement. Sounds a very big job. So maybe you can just give us an overview.
Quick overview. My hands are in kind of a lot of different pots, so to speak. So I oversee social selling at Pitney Bowes. That does encompass, though, a little bit of marketing. Obviously, I'm working hand in hand with global sales teams, and then there's the employee advocacy aspect as well that comes into the mix. So there's kind of that sort of whole package that's put together, which I oversee.
So how long have you been doing that role, Paul? Now
Now,
he's
what is it? A
thinking, or
little,
is he frozen?
little over 11 years.
Oh, what have we done? We just lost you then. There
Oh,
you go. I see you again. You can tell we're live. Can you hear me, Paul?
I
Yeah.
can hear you. I can hear you. Yeah, I've been doing that now for a little over 11 years. So joined Pitney Bowes back in 2012.
So 11 years. Right. We're going to tap into that. Now, anybody who's watching us live, give us a wave, say hello, drop us a comment. Obviously, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't do that, but you can join the next live session. But put your questions in, because this is a great opportunity to ask somebody who's a practitioner of this, has been doing it for a while. I'm going to say a long time, because 11 years ago, Paul, I don't think we really had social selling, did we? Or were you one of the pioneers? I'd love to know where it started.
Do I call myself a pioneer? I mean, look, I kind of jumped on board with this in the early days. So I don't even think the term social selling had kind of been bounded around at that point. But it really was a case of at the time we were just looking for sort of new and inventive ways of trying to generate leads, sales leads, with, let's say, very little budget. And I'd kind of been delving into social media and thought to myself at the time, surely there's got to be sort of like a sales application around social. And I think, that was kind of like that sort of catalyst moment. That's where it kind of all started.
Yeah. Where did that curiosity start then? Have you worked in sales, or have you always been in marketing? How did you make that connection? I'm curious.
I'm predominantly I am a marketer,
Mm.
but I have worked in sort of business development and sales roles. Albeit in a small capacity. By profession, I am a marketer, and whilst I've had the opportunities, to go down that let's call it the dark side of sales or business development, I've kind of always been hesitant. I've always wanted to stay on the marketing front, which is kind of where my passion is, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, one thing you mentioned earlier is that you said you touch a little bit on employee advocacy, social media, and Pitney Bowes is a massive it's a global organization, right? So can you just talk to us a little bit about that and how this transcends? Because a lot of people in our community will be in global organizations, different cultures, different approaches to social. So can you give us a bit of an indication as to how you do that at Pitney Bowes?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say when I first started out at Pitney Bowes and kind of built this program, this started off in a very, very small capacity, in a small manner, with, thinking back, probably what, 7, maybe 10 sales reps at the time who were based here in the
Yeah.
UK. And then slowly but surely, as I've kind of built and scaled this program, kind of really, I would say, sort of word of mouth, has helped to really sort of project this, and turn it into a global program. So now, this spans, you know, pretty much, every continent, where we have a presence, and I'm working now with, everything from, business development or inside sales or pre-sales people right the way through to, let's say field sales, or major account managers, people like that. And at the same time, there's without going into huge amounts of detail on Pitney Bowes, but I'm working with sales reps who, on the one side might be selling in a franking machine or a postage meter, which is what most people know Pitney Bowes for, and a business win there, could be a couple of $1,000s. To the opposite end of the scale, whereby we have a big global e-commerce business unit, whereby the sales there run into the hundreds of thousands, if not the millions of dollars. So it really does span that entire sort of spectrum. Within sales, from the small wins, right the way up to to the enterprise sort of level
Mm.
deals.
So you said it started with like 7 to 10. So where are you at now in this program? Are we talking, hundreds, thousands?
Um, Currently, I'm working with 300
Wow.
sales people across Pitney Bowes. So the majority of those individuals are based in the United States or
Mhm.
Canada. There's a handful as well, dotted around Europe. And slowly but surely now we've got people coming on board in India, a small number of individuals in Australia and New Zealand, and I've now got people in Brazil that's showing an interest as
Amazing.
well. So, it really has grown, and that's, I would say, mainly by word of mouth. But at the same time, when people get to hear also about some of the business wins, because that's, one key aspect of it, to communicate, details of the program, but in particular the business
Mm.
wins. To communicate that internally is the best way, really, of garnering further
Mm.
interest.
Oh, I've got so many questions that I'm writing down now, Paul. Now, I've got to say, Ryan says there's a slight delay, but he can still hear us both fine. So that's good. Thank you, Ryan. Hello, Dave from Canada. Actually, you just mentioned Canada. So, Dave, you always join our sessions. Lovely to see you, Dave. Anybody else wants to drop a comment or a question? I've got a ton of questions for Paul, but now's your time to ask. So business wins. I'm going to come back to that one. In fact, yes, I will. So you mentioned about different roles: inside sales, key account managers, pre-sales, field sales. Can you tell us a little bit about the different roles and how they approach social selling or using social media for sales? Because you've clearly defined different roles there, so maybe there's different applications.
Yeah, so for example, a major account manager is going to be focused specifically on, let's say, 7 to 10 accounts. So that is, sort of their core focus. So obviously, I'm going to be able to work with that person. We can do a deep dive into those accounts. We can look for cross sell and upsell opportunities. And it really is a case of running, let's say, account based marketing programs, geared around those specific accounts that that salesperson's got a particular focus on. But kind of me sort of keeping them up to date with the latest happenings, who's joining the business, who may have left the business. It could be that maybe we're working, for a large enterprise account, but we've only got one, sort of small part of that
Yeah.
business. Whereas, there are other parts of that business that, we haven't, kind of stepped, taken that step yet. So it's then trying to sort of leverage the individuals that we have the relationship with within that account to see whether or not they can help us by making introductions to to other people within other business
Mm,
areas. So that would be like on the account based marketing
yeah.
side, for a major account manager. Then again, I'll be working with salespeople whose core focus is specifically net new business. So they are not touching any company that's had any sort of relationship with Pitney Bowes in the past. So, I will be able to help them identify, who those accounts are. Then obviously we can identify the key targets within those
Mhm.
accounts, and then undertake the methodology that I've put together in order to then start to try and build those relationships with those individuals that we identify.
Yeah. Do you know, there's a couple of things you said there actually. So your style is very much like working one to one, especially with the major account managers. It sounds like you sit and you workshop it with them on the phone. I love that. But also, using referrals, Team Link is amazing. Team Link Extend, and there's also a new filter. Well, it's not so new anymore, but in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, where you can see which executive can introduce you into that account, especially for net new names, which is a brilliant filter. So I love all this. This is really cool. But there's only one of you, right, Paul? Or are you in a team? I don't know.
No, there's only one of me doing this. So as you can well imagine, trying to serve 300 salespeople across the business globally, on my own, it's not easy.
Yeah.
So
How does that work then? Because I mean, how you can't do one to well, you will do a lot of one to one, but what does that look like? How do you manage that? Because this is the case for a lot of our customers. It's one person, and how do you scale yourself?
look, not gonna lie. It's it's not easy. Yes, I have the support of LinkedIn. So if I ever need to pull them into to undertake training, or coaching sessions, they are there. So I do have that luxury. Again, whilst I'll try and run sessions for a specific team, I do tend to find that those one-to-one sessions, just work so much better.
Mm,
Everybody's got their own, sort of pace of learning. Everybody's going to need a degree of hand holding. And sometimes, doing it in that group environment isn't necessarily the best of environments to work in.
no.
So it is difficult, and yeah, I'm trying slowly but surely to sort of build a train the trainer
Mhm.
program within Pitney Bowes. So at least I'll have some local representatives in in different geographies. That are going to be able to assist on this front. But it's I think, Sarah, to be honest with you, it's probably one of the key sort of barriers that that I face, and have to try and overcome on a daily basis.
Yeah, scaling up. And I've just realised Dave actually asked that question. Sorry, Dave. I asked it and then I saw your question. So there you go. Two birds, one stone. Um, I was going to talk. Also touched on business wins and how it's important to capture those because quite often when you start with social selling, you've got to capture those little wins to then encourage others and to put them out. How do you get insight into what's happening? Do those sort of bubble up in these coaching conversations that you have? How do you capture those wins and then put them in front of everyone?
So there's kind of two aspects to that. Firstly, whenever a salesperson who I'm working with, if they have generated, a sales opportunity, when they're putting that opportunity into our CRM system, I am trying to enforce that they attribute that particular opportunity back to the program that I lead. So there is a specific campaign code that I've had created whereby I get them to just append that code onto that actual CRM Salesforce
Mhm.
opportunity. Now, that's easier said than done because we all know how difficult it is to get a salesperson to put something into a CRM system. Even the basic information, let alone asking them to put in a campaign code. So, really the other aspect to that is that anytime I learn about an opportunity or an account that a salesperson is working on, I'll go and find that opportunity myself within Salesforce and I'll follow that.
Mm.
And Salesforce just gives me those regular updates every single time that sales rep makes an update to that particular opportunity. And at the same time, I'm, let's say, nagging the salespeople that I'm working with constantly. Give me an update. How's this going? Why is it stalled?
Mm.
If it's stalled, is there anything that I can do? What can we do to move that opportunity from stage 2 to stage 3 or stage 3 to stage 4, whatever
Mm.
it may be? So I'm kind of constantly asking just to try and get updates, because ultimately I've got to justify the investment that Pitney Bowes is making. With all the tools and technologies, the main one being Sales
Yeah.
Navigator. But I've got to justify that ongoing investment, and the only way that I can do that is to demonstrate, exactly how much are we generating as a result in the way of sales opportunities, and more importantly, of those opportunities that have been generated, how many of them actually go through to close won
Yeah.
deals.
And you mentioned something there which has sparked my brain when you said, how do we apply social selling to move that deal from one stage to the next? That's really smart, actually. So you're not just looking at how we can get access to new accounts, how we can deepen existing accounts, but you're even looking at the stage of the deal and how you can move it from one to the other and what techniques you can apply to help support that process. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, examples there. We've had deals that have been stalled, for one reason or another, and it's not necessarily um, in any way the fault of the main points of contact within the account. Maybe everything's been agreed, but it's I don't know, a procurement team or the legal team within that account that are kind of sitting on the contract.
Mm.
And I've had it in the past whereby we've used Sales Navigator to look up who is the head of legal or who is the head of
Oh, gosh.
procurement. And we've reached out to those individuals with an attempt to try and push things along,
Mm.
and it's
Yeah,
worked. It has worked.
brilliant.
Yeah, don't sort of disregard using that approach, to try and move an opportunity that may have stalled. It does
Yeah,
work.
super application. I don't think we've ever had that on LinkedIn Live before. So, and just a quick reminder, anybody who's watching, anybody who wants to pop in a question, you're most welcome to. I've got more than enough, but I will weave them in if that's what you would like. Now, I'm going to go back to what you've originally said about employee advocacy, because now in my experience, quite often advocacy is managed separately, maybe by internal comms or marketing, or its application is a little bit different, employer branding. But you mentioned it when you talked about social selling, so you've obviously integrated the two. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how employee advocacy tools may help your sales teams?
Yeah, so kind of let's sort of strip this down. So I've got this methodology which I've put together, that I try as best as I possibly can to stick to that when I'm working with these salespeople. It all starts, which probably comes as no surprise, with helping to build their personal
Yeah.
brands. Ultimately, if they're not obviously positioning themselves in the correct way on LinkedIn, they're not doing themselves any favors. And of course, any activity that they carry out on LinkedIn is likely to result in people clicking through to view their profile. So that's where I start. There's, I would say, sort of a four-stage process, from there on, which is, let's call it the social selling sort of steps, whereby we'll start off with step one, which is, let's call it the prospecting. So this is where obviously we're going to try and carry out various different ways in order to identify the key targets within accounts that we're looking to go ahead and engage. Steps 2 and 3, I term these as sort of monitor and listening.
Mhm.
So this is where we kind of want to monitor. And listen out for all the latest news, insights, updates, on the individuals and the accounts that are of interest to us, because hopefully we can leverage some of those news and insights to our advantage. And then the final stage of the four there is the engagement stage, whereby there's a variety of different ways that we can look to go about kickstarting that process of engagement. But coming back, Sarah, to what you were saying about the employee advocacy, all of that is underpinned by the need for that salesperson to be sharing content on LinkedIn on a regular basis. And that's a healthy mix of both Pitney Bowes content, but also carefully selected third party content, because what we're trying to do is obviously position that salesperson as being, that subject matter expert. We want to try and, further build their credibility. And that's where the employee advocacy aspect comes into it.
Mhm.
I don't want to pull a salesperson away from the job that they're being asked to do, which is, going out and selling.
Yeah.
So if we can make life as easy as possible for that salesperson, especially when it comes down to having them post out content onto LinkedIn, and for that matter, other social media networks, then I'll do whatever I can to ensure that we make that process as simple as possible.
Yeah. It's a good point, because I read a report, and I'm trying to, as you was talking, I was thinking, was it Forrester or Gartner? I can't remember, but one of them said, salespeople are spending only probably about 30% of their time actually selling, because they're updating CRM, writing proposals, but they do
Yeah,
30% of their time is in front of the customer. I think it was Gartner. And then, what you're saying here is, and now we're going to ask you to find some content, which can't, it's not always easy, because you've got to make sure, is it okay? Is it mentioning competitors? Can we share this? So this provides a bit of a safe bucket, really, and it just cuts that time out, and it can just save, but it also gives you another layer of data that you can start to look at. So brilliant.
exactly, exactly. And we're leveraging the recommended content section of the Pitney Bowes LinkedIn company page. So,
Yeah.
we're putting content up there on a regular basis and having the salespeople go in and share that content. But we try and encourage them, if they can, to put their own spin on it. So whilst we're crafting that content for them, we're more than happy for them to play around with the words, and if they want to, they can even start to tap into LinkedIn's AI engine. So there is that ability there. So if they're still not sure on what should I say, they can get a little assistance from the artificial intelligence engine that LinkedIn's now providing.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, so thank you, Donna, for popping that report in, the Gartner one. But it was you that put this in my head, actually, Donna, because it was the HubSpot 2024 sales trends report that you found. I forgot about that. And that's where it said sales teams are spending just 33% of their time actively selling. And you mentioned AI, and this is becoming a typical thing for us to bring on these calls. I'm going to jump to that question about AI. Paul, where do you think it's going in the context of digital selling, social media for sales? Where do you think AI is going to start weaving into that methodology?
Look, I could discuss this all day long. Um, I think AI is there. AI is there to support salespeople, but ultimately, and look, this is my belief. Ultimately, nothing is gonna take away from that actual physical relationship between the prospect or the client and the salesperson. So whilst we can tap into all sorts of AI applications, whether that be, I don't know, Chat GPT for helping to craft sales messaging,
Hmm.
or any other AI systems that might predict, I don't know, the best time to try and engage a prospect. Ultimately, that's all there, and I'd say yes, tap into it and leverage that and make the most of it, because obviously if it's going to save a salesperson time, as you've just said, Sarah, um, you know then that's great. But ultimately it's still got to be that salesperson who fronts the campaign, so to speak, and has those regular conversations with the prospect or the client.
Yeah, I would agree. And actually, so thank you, Scott, for saying hello. Scott Robbins says hello. Good to hear from you, Paul. So I think you might know him. Sandy said not thrilled with LinkedIn's AI yet. No, some bits are better than others. I quite like the account IQ. That's quite useful. But the whole AI generated bio and all of that is not that great. I tell you what I did see the other day pop up though, and I know not everybody uses this, but I've got Crystal Nose embedded into my LinkedIn. And when you send messages, it can allow you to use AI to automatically not only create the message, but then tailor the message for a disc profile of the person that you're about to send it to. That's quite clever. And I've seen it change the message before my eyes. So the language changes based on who. Oh, my light's gone off. I did say that was going to happen, didn't I, Paul? Hold on, there we go. It's back. But yeah, that was it. So I don't know if anybody uses Crystal Nose. Pop it in the comments. I think there's a bit of a delay, but if you do use it, pop it in the comments. I'd be interested to know. So,
It's it's a really really good little bit of technology. I've only got the free sort of Google Chrome extension, but
yeah.
it's good. I'd definitely recommend having a look into it. Like you say, Sarah, if you identify somebody, it's quite amazing what Crystal knows will actually pull up on the individual, and even give you an indication as to you know do you use like techno
Yep.
speak, when engaging with that person, or should you steer well clear of that and stick to plain English? Very, very, very insightful. So yeah, definitely anyone who hasn't, check out Crystal
Yeah,
Knows.
and if you haven't done it, I remember doing it with somebody, and it came up. So put your own name into it, and it'll Crystal Nose profile you, and it's really quite scary to have a look at the first thing. And I remember showing it to someone who was skeptical of everything, and it came up, and it went, "You tend to be quite skeptical." I was like, "Yeah, well, it would say that, wouldn't it?" And I was like, let's just say that that's what it did say that you would say. So yeah, where have I got? Oh yes, I've got another one here for you. Come and again, put your questions in if you want to hear it. So get Paul to answer. Right, I hear a common challenge: inactive licenses. So we're not fully utilizing them. We're not utilizing them as best we could. And can you give our community a little bit of insight as to how you manage that? Do you have that challenge? And if so, how you manage it?
So it is a challenge that I do face. There are, um, I'll be totally open and honest. There are plenty of people who, at Pitney Bowes have been given a Sales Navigator license that aren't necessarily leveraging it to its full potential. There are a handful as well who have a Sales Navigator license and they just never seem to log in and and even use it. You know, in that case, I tend to reach out to those individuals to say, look, this is a really clever piece of technology here. So what can I do to help you? And hopefully they're going to come back to me, and in many cases they do, to say, yeah, can you give me a refresher, or can you show me this, or can you show me that, once again. I have gone through on numerous occasions, though, the process of, you know, I've contacted someone who's just not using their license. I've offered them, additional help and support. They've not come back to me.
Yeah.
I've then gone back to them and offered that again, and I'll do that maybe 2 or 3 times, at which point, it's clear, at that stage that, I'm just not going to get anywhere with this individual. And I'm better off channeling my time and my effort, you know, with other people, and therefore I'll just revoke the license. I'll pull the
Mm.
license. I've got plenty of people lining up around the block here waiting for a Sales Navigator
Yeah.
license. And I put money on it that that person that I revoked the license from, I bet you in 6 months' time, all of a sudden, out of the blue, I'll receive an email from them to say, "So this Sales Navigator thing that you were talking to me about 6 months ago,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about it," or how do I get access to it? So they do come around, but it is important, Sarah, for anyone that's overseeing a program, you know delve into to obviously the usage stats.
Mm.
I mean, obviously you can lose yourself within those numbers, but I would say the core one to look at really is the number of days active that individual has been. Obviously, if you can see that they're not active, then there's clearly additional help that person
Mm.
requires, and that's where you need to be sort of channeling your efforts initially to to see if there's something you can do to spark that individual into action.
Yeah. You make a good point there, though, Paul, because you can't convince people, right? You need to work with the ones that are already in that mindset. The ones that perhaps are not there yet, they'll get there, but in their own time. And maybe the time is just not right. And like you said, 6 months later,
Yeah.
it'll be that stuff you were talking about. I'm kind of interested. So helping the ones that have intent to invest some time in, I think, is an easier job. And especially when there's only one of you, you have to choose your battles, don't you? So prioritize.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
So,
It's
oh yeah.
it's just like I say, it's just an ongoing issue, and I'm going to say anyone that's leading a program, regardless of whether you've got 300 licenses or 3 licenses, you're going to see that there are those that are using the license, and there are those that are, let's say, underutilizing it. So it's just a case of really trying to stay on top of that, and doing whatever you can to to ensure that everyone that has been allocated a license is leveraging it, and understands the value that it can offer.
Yeah. Yeah, you really are quite an enabler of change. And this is not just about tools, this is behavior change. And I've said this over and over again, this is a change management process. And even the LinkedIn Sales Navigator community recognized you as a social selling enabler. What was it called? I can't remember. You had an award, didn't you? Or got recognized?
There was an award, I think it was last year, of I can't even remember now the actual term of a name of the award. But if you haven't checked it out, if you have got a Sales Navigator license, you'll have access to this fantastic community that LinkedIn has created. If you need questions answered, if you want to find out, sort of tips and tricks or the latest, news and insights on what's coming, the community is the place to go. I've been an active member of that community for quite some time. Anytime that I can, sort of try and help others, and obviously, sort of share my knowledge, I'm only too happy to do so. And you'll find a lot of information that I've shared within that community. So
Yeah. And that's where our paths crossed, didn't it? Because we were, as community members, we were all invited to LinkedIn a few weeks ago. And that's when we got chatting. It was like, Paul, we've not had you on a LinkedIn Live. Do you fancy doing that? And here we are.
there you go.
So, right, my final question, and I'm going to just check back if I wonder if anyone's hearing us actually, because I was hoping people might put some things in about Crystal Knows there. But anyway, my final question still ties back to AI, and then I'm going to summarize it up. But as an organization, is Pitney Bowes looking at how to integrate AI into sales processes, beyond Sales Navigator and social selling, but how are they applying? Obviously, you can't give confidential data and information, but what's the thoughts that are going on around AI and sales generally and relationships?
We're very much sort of geared towards embracing AI. I mean, we've got a whole suite of tools and technologies that we're leveraging, on the marketing side, but also on the sales side, and we're tapping into the AI, sort of applications that those tools and technologies have to offer. We've even gone to the extent of we've actually created our own AI bot internally within Pitney
Mm.
Bowes. I have to say, excuse me, I've not actually used it yet, but I know that salespeople are using it. It is, designed to help speed up some of the processes that they have to work through. And slowly but surely, it's being rolled out into various different business areas.
Mm.
So, we're very much an organisation that's definitely open to embracing the world of AI and seeing where it takes
Yeah,
us.
and we are too, actually. I mean, obviously we're much smaller than you guys, but the way it's just brilliant, actually, how you apply it, how you can see, and the way you roll it out. It's not like a new tech. You can't just sort of train people on it. You have to weave it into everyday processes and technologies and the way that you do things, and then share it with others. So I always like record a quick video. We do it to each other, actually, and it's like, hey, I just used our Copilot to create this and speed this process up, and the behavior change happens amongst the community, rather than right, let's go, let's all change. So yeah, it's a good one. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so Helen, yes, I can see Ryan's sorted that out. Crystal knows, yes, we've got that, and they can hear us, so they've not gone. That's good, isn't it, Paul? Because I did wonder, I was like, oh, nobody's
Good.
heard about it. Um, that was brilliant, Paul. Thank you so much. And there's a few things here that I've circled that really stuck out for me. The stages apply. You There's one thing looking at social selling or sales, social media for sales for different roles, but actually different stages of the pipeline. And the great example that you gave there about looking up who's in legal, who's in procurement. Let's see if we can speed this process up. What a brilliant application of taking the actual process and applying it. The business wins as well, how you've said, yes, you do force the process, but you also watch deals in the pipeline and like, hold on a minute, didn't I help you get into that account? Don't you think you should be putting some accreditation next to that? And then this whole workshopping approach that you do. So you obviously spend a lot of one-to-one time with people, really getting them in, but then how you manage the licenses and how you let people come up and see the light when they're ready to, and you don't try and force them. I think these are great examples. And I love that you're talking about employee advocacy as well, because I agree. It's one of the most time consuming parts of a salesperson's role to keep nurturing their digital networks is finding content, and advocacy can help there. So have you got anything to add, Paul, before you go? Anything that I've not covered in my questions?
Wow. What? Anything else? Let me give you one other little tip as well. So, we were talking earlier on, and I was saying about, the idea of looking up those people that are working in procurement or those people that are working in legal. One other key role within an organization. If you're trying to let's say get your foot in the door, and you're not necessarily having any luck with the specific individuals that you've initially identified, try and reach out to somebody that oversees HR. Um, that individual is normally very, very well connected within
Oh,
their organization. So it's just another, sort of, let's say, a slightly different approach to take, in order to get into an organization. But, sometimes you can't necessarily take that direct approach. You're coming at it from a slightly different angle here. But the HR approach is one that I've used on a few occasions,
yeah.
and that's worked as well.
That is
So
a great idea. And it's just actually reminded me of another thing, which is you may not get everybody wants to reach the C suite, right? But they're the most busiest people that spend the least amount of time on digital platforms. Quite often they're with customers. And so actually sometimes going a couple of levels down the organization, maybe even further, to somebody who's on LinkedIn, who is accessible and active, and getting them to influence upwards. And that can also help. So, what a great, these are all strategies, aren't they, for getting into new accounts, but in a non conventional way.
yeah,
Um, yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Paul, it was, I knew this was going to be a good one. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening, for everyone.
thank you,
And everyone
Sarah.
for coming and the little chit chat that was going on. And oh, Helen said, brilliant link between employee advocacy and social selling. So yeah, absolutely. It's an untalked about linked. And this, I think, Paul, what you do is quite unusual because most organizations haven't made that link. So, and there is a very clear link. The problem is a lot of employee advocacy tools have got brand content in. And as you said earlier, your sales teams to be trusted advisors need to know to demonstrate they know the industry, not just the brand. So thank you. So yeah. Thank you, everyone else, for watching and for podcast listeners that are listening onto the recording. If you want to find the next LinkedIn Live, check us out. Follow us on LinkedIn at Tribal Impact, and we'll be publishing the next one there. In the meantime, thank you very much, Paul. Really appreciate your time today.